Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming to this forum. First of all, I'd like to express my special thanks to our highly respected Mr. Deng, Chairman Deng. You contribute substantially to Hong Kong's prosperity, development, and close relationship with the mainland. We thank you very much. And I'm particularly touched by your continued commitment over these years. And thank you very much for mobilizing so many people coming for this forum. Thank you. And I'm very much happy to see so many distinguished guests. Many of you have contributed greatly to Hong Kong's prosperity. You have achieved excellent performance in your own field of study. You deserve our great respect as people in the mainland, and I would really love to have a dialogue with you instead of dominating this forum. So I would say something, and probably we can have a kind of dialogue. I would welcome as many questions as possible from you, but I certainly cannot guarantee the quality of my answer. After the video show, probably I think I could stray from my prepared statement and give you some of the anecdotes, because everything about AIIB is over there, right? So we could have a little bit more fun. But first of all, I'd like to extend a very special thank to our Hong Kong Foundation, as well as the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, the Financial Services Development Council, the Hong Kong Association of Banks, the Treasury Markets Association, the Hong Kong Chinese General Chamber of Commerce, the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce, the Chinese Manufacturers Association of Hong Kong, and the Federation of Hong Kong Industries for arranging this event. I'm overwhelmed by your enthusiasm, by your interest in AIIB. I can think of no better place in the world than Hong Kong to discuss regional cooperation and the AIIB. As China begins its policy of opening up under Deng Xiaoping in the late 1970s, Hong Kong established itself as a key gateway between China and the rest of Asia and the world. Today, it's the premier financial hub for all of Asia. Now, when I came to this center, I couldn't help reminding myself of the way this center was being built. Perhaps not many people know that in 1990, when I was on the board of the World Bank, the British executive director, I still remember his name, Mr. David Peretz, talked to me in private, said, "Mr. Jin, I have an idea. Can you convey this idea to your authority in Beijing?" I said, "It depends on what kind of idea you have." And he said, "You know, in 1997, we would have the handover of Hong Kong to People's Republic of China. And we believe it's extremely important for Hong Kong to maintain its prosperity after the handover." In 1997, 2 months before the handover, we would have the annual meeting of IMF and the World Bank. Oh, after that, right? So can we work together to make sure the IMF and the World Bank meeting would be held in Hong Kong? And I said, that certainly is a wonderful idea. However, I know Singapore has been standing in a line. And there are some other countries, because you see, you have to prepare way before the event really takes place. And then he said, we could have division of labor between UK and China. We would work on the European countries, developed countries, and you work on the developing countries. Let's have the meeting in Hong Kong. So the response from the central government was certainly favorable, and we started to work with the Hong Kong authority. That was the origin of this center. Of course, there was option one. Option one if we couldn't have finished this center, so we would in the old exhibition center, right, which is certainly much smaller. But you see, we have great people in Hong Kong. They worked very hard, round the clock, and finally producing the highest quality convention center. I think the image is very clear. It's going to take off, right? So I'm very happy to be back here having a dialogue with you. But you see, when we watch this video, I think as Chinese, as people in Hong Kong, we should all of us be proud of setting up this bank. This is the first bank initiated and led by China. This is also the first bank led by the Asian developing countries. As you see, Asians account for 75% of the voting power. Never ever in this world is such a great multilateral development bank with developing countries as the majority shareholders. So you, Hong Kong people, have a good reason to be really proud of yourself. Now, I was bombarded with questions by the media, by my friends here, when Hong Kong could be a member. I'm working very hard. And as you know, we have about 30 countries waiting to join. We are going to have the second board meeting at the end of this month, and we will discuss the procedure for accepting new members. Hong Kong is certainly part of this group. So let me share with you some of the really anecdotes. A couple of months ago, I attended a gathering with quite a number of friends. A lot of people came from the United States. And when my friend, Michael Bloomberg, walked into the room, he saw me and he said, "Mr. Jin, I know you're the president of AIIB. Condolences." And I said, my friends were shocked. "What do you mean?" And I said, "Michael, you reminds me of the condolence message from Milton Friedman to Paul Volcker when he was appointed the Fed chairman of the Fed. You know, my friend Larry, you know about that. And Milton Friedman said, condolences, because this is an impossible job. I certainly cannot be compared to Paul Volcker, but I think the challenge is there. I think the right answer is, if we take this as a kind of warning about the challenge, it's really good, because we will be prepared for tough challenges about how running this bank by the highest international standard. We don't need compliments. We don't need nice words. We need warnings. We need critical comments. We need even very skeptical comments or questions, because that, I think, is important. We Chinese have a saying, 人无远虑，必有近忧, right? If you don't think about the concerns way ahead, the trouble might be right around the next corner. And this is the wisdom from our ancestors. But you see, I take this condolence in stride because I'm very much confident with the backing of the People's Republic of China, with the backing of the Chinese people and Hong Kong people, with the backing of all of the Asian countries and also the people of the European countries, all of the 57 member countries. There's no reason why we cannot do a great job. So thank you very much for your support. I'm looking forward to your continued commitment and support. And we believe with the support of all of the 57 member countries, the board, and also new members, we would make AIIB the greatest multilateral development bank in the world with a 21st century governance. When the idea was floated, there were questions, skeptics. You know, we took it in stride. We didn't think it was necessary for us to make a big fuss, to fighting with people. Why do you think this is not going to be a great bank? Why do you question us? I don't think that's the right attitude. I remember The English writer, English novelist Jane Austen, in Mansfield Park, she said, selfishness must always be forgiven, because there's no hope of a cure. And I would tell Jane Austen, I said, my respected novelist, I'm sorry, I want to correct you. I would say skepticism must always be forgiven, because there's no hope of a cure. Why should we waste time debating with people that this is going to be a great bank? Why shouldn't we devote ourselves to the real work, to set up very good governance, to design a new modus operandi, to recruit the top talents across the world, and then go forward step by step in a down-to-earth manner? Because it's very much important to understand credibility has to be earned. Trust has to be earned. You cannot talk people into believing you. Don't forget it. Don't even think about that. Work hard. Trust others, and you'll be trusted. I think it's very much important for us to build a mutual trust between the board, which is non-resident, and the management. I'm very happy to see that from the very beginning, we had only about 10 countries to talk to, expanding to 17, 22, 57. 3 months into operation, the countries, more than 30, with firm commitment to join, are even more eager to join, because just 3 months, the way we run this institution, the way we communicate with the board, the way we handle all of those delicate matters, have further convinced those countries on the waiting list to make sure that they have to be members as soon as possible. So AIIB is up to a good start, but I think we have a lot of things to do. Now, coming back to my statement, written statement, because I've traded far too away, right? I think there are still some important messages. As we look at the world today, you see great changes are taking place. We are faced with weak global growth and demand for goods, booming debts, and the fear of protectionism and job losses. All these are the very tough reality that all the countries face. Europe is confronted with both economic challenges from debt and social pressures from the refugees. The US debates over whether to keep rising interest rates, which would pour liquidity out of emerging markets and affect all of us across Asia. China, too, is undergoing unprecedented change. China is on the cusp of major reforms and change. As the country shifts from a growth pattern driven by exports and investments to a new pattern driven by consumption and innovations, the way it interacts with the world will be flipped on its end. So please consider this. Over the past 30 years, China has been a massive importer of capital and has become the world's largest exporter of goods. In the next 30 years, these roles will reverse. China will become a significant exporter of capital, and it has the potential to become the world's largest consumer market and importer of goods and services. So this is a reality. The period of fast, easy growth has come probably and gone. Now, in a truly globalized economy, we must find ways to break down barriers against the trade and cross-border investment and live peacefully among all of the nations. We must work together to find new innovative solutions to drive growth, and we have but one option, I think: enhanced cooperation and regional and global integration. The Asian Infrastructure Bank, AIIB, epitomizes this cooperation and integration. Yes, AIIB has the birthmark of China, but we are nurtured by 57 member countries. So the upbringing of AIIB will be in the charge of all the 57 countries, and very soon about 100 countries. This is very important fact. We should understand AIIB is not a Chinese bank. It's a bank owned by all of the member countries and should be managed and run that way. As an institution, with 75% of the shares owned by the Asian regional members and with a large contribution from developing countries, we can draw on the development experience from many countries, both emerging market economy and developed economies alike. It is important for developing countries to have a voice, to offer new ideas and create this new institution. Developing countries in Asia recorded an average growth of 6.5% in 2015 and contributed more than 40% of the world's total growth. Their role in global growth and global economy should not be belittled. For the first time, we have a development institution, a regional bank in Asia, where regional shareholders are the majority. As the president of AIIB, I have an enormous responsibility. You know, when so many countries want to join, and when all the governors elected me as the president, this is a vote of confidence. Vote of confidence in China and a vote of confidence in me personally. I cannot let you down. So I think it's very, very important. We are fully aware of the high expectations placed on this bank. No aspiration is more laudable, and no challenge is more awesome than to run such kind of institution with many challenges facing it. Because people would ask, now you set up a bank with 75% of the shares owned by the Asian countries. Most of them are developing countries, except Australia, New Zealand, and relatively developed Singapore and Korea. Are you capable of running this bank by the highest possible standard? If I don't do so well, people will quickly forget this is a lousy job done by Mr. Jin. They will say, hey, Asians, no good. The Chinese, no good. So I think I should keep this in mind. It's not my personal issue. It's not my personal matter. It's not my personal reputation. The initial concept of this bank was and will remain straightforward. AIIB will finance infrastructure projects that promote broad-based economic and social development in a cost-effective way. We want to facilitate connectivity, supporting projects that are financially sustainable, environmentally friendly, and socially acceptable. That will meet the needs of the people in Asia, and that will bring benefits to people in the rest of the world. As you know, connectivity in Asia will truly integrate Eurasia landmass. That will bring benefits to many European countries. When you see from the media, from the TV channels, the refugees, you certainly hope you can help them. I hope the Asians will be free from this kind of trouble. And let's work together to build a better Asia. And a more developed Asia will certainly be great for the rest of the world. You see, cooperation and hard work are what bring stability, and stability is the fundamental guarantee for human rights and social and economic development. Cooperation facilitates balance, ensuring extreme views do not become a driving force. It gives us the freedom to pursue new ideas and foster innovative solutions to problems, while always making sure we stay within proper bounds. I would like to talk for a moment about China's motivations for establishing this bank. China's initiative was received initially with suspicion from some countries, from some people. Skeptics cast doubt on China's ability to create such a bank and to attract supporters from the Asian region, particularly in the context of territorial disputes with some of its neighbors. Speculations ran rampant that China intends to create and run a bank that could undercut the World Bank and AIIB by its reckless lending operations with total disregard of environment and human rights. I do not deny that China's goal of increasing its global influence, but it is important to recognize that this is something entirely different from promoting its domestic agenda. Now, 2 years ago, if people had this kind of questions, doubts, I think they could be certainly readily pardoned. But after 2 years, when this bank is up and running, we have worked very closely with the board and with all of the member countries. I would say probably the skeptics should have a rest. And it's certainly very unfortunate that some people find when their eyes refuse to see what's really happening, their imagination would supply what their eyes refuse to see. So I hope instead of playing your imagination into full play, bringing your imagination into full play, why don't you just open your eyes and see? And if you're not sure, please come to our bank and take a look and talk to our shareholders. That would be probably more helpful. By initiating AIIB, China wanted to prove it is a responsible member of the international community. China has developed to a stage where international contribution matters more. And while this may not be the consensus view in the world, there are plenty of people who realize this. AIIB would not be able to count 57 countries among its shareholders if it was designed to serve China's interests exclusively. That would not be possible. Of equal importance is our creation was that China's leaders felt it's time to developing nations to have a larger voice. Developing countries are trying to change the status quo and want to experiment with new development and poverty reduction approaches. In this way, the motivation to initiate AIIB stems from the shared experience of developing countries in Asia, and China's in particular. Back in 1980, when China had just embarked on the reform and opening up program, and when President McNamara came to Beijing in May to meet with our late leader Deng Xiaoping for China's membership in the World Bank, China was ranked among the lowest countries in this world, with a paltry GDP per capita of $270. And I was posted to the World Bank's Executive Director's Office in 1980, December, right after I finished my graduate programs in Beijing. I'm sorry, it's such a disgrace for a nation boasting 5,000 years of history and civilization. Born in the late 1940s, I went through those difficult years. The China of the 1960s and 1970s, or the economic landscape of China in those years, resembles a black and white picture that will stay in my memory forever. But when we now look at China, look at the new political and economic landscape, I think any Chinese would feel proud, unless he or she is not in his right mind. Membership in the World Bank ushered in an age of reconstruction and development. What came from the World Bank was not just financial resources. We were really students. We knew virtually nothing when we walked into the World Bank in H Street. Everything was new. But more crucially, new development concepts and efficiency, major improvements in technology and better managerial expertise. In the ensuing years, massive investment in infrastructure, bilateral assistance, and improved access to international capital markets changed China's physical and economic landscape beyond recognition. In the early 1980s, there were no expressways, no electrified railways, no major power plants with generations over 300 megawatts, no high voltage transmission lines, no modern airports or seaports, no nothing. Largely owing to broad-ranging benefits of improving infrastructure, China managed to lift over 500 million people out of poverty. By the World Bank standards, by China standards, it's 600 million people. In just over 2 decades, with the percentage of the population living in poverty falling from 65% in 1981 to just over 4% in 2007. China's goal is to lift a further 70 million people out of poverty by 2020, effectively ending poverty in this country using China's poverty standards. Compared to the progress in the past, this is simply a piece of cake. Now that China is more developed and can thus afford to provide financial resources to other developing countries, it's China's turn to do something for the rest of Asia. As President Xi Jinping said at the signing ceremony of the Articles Agreement, this is what he said: "We in China have benefited from the general support of the World Bank, of the AIIB, and from bilateral support. The Chinese people will never forget this. We are grateful. It's now China's turn to contribute." To the question of how we fit in the matrix of other multilateral development banks, other AIIBs, there are 2 questions to consider. How are we similar or different from other AIIBs? How will our actions affect other AIIBs and their businesses? On the first point, we do something because other AIIBs do them. And we do something because other AIIBs don't do them. In other words, we do different things, and we do things differently. And we also do the same thing, sometimes together. Ultimately, we are part of the same AIIB family. We are not widely different, but we have striking new features to justify our reason of existence. Where we are not different is in terms of governance and our core principles. Our environmental and social standards are harmonized with that of the World Bank and other AIIBs like EBRD, ADB, AIIB. Our operational policies and institutional documents have benefited enormously from other AIIBs' expertise. Indeed, many of these documents were developed by the experts seasoned professionals with years and decades of experience working in those institutions. But we are different from other MDBs in some crucial ways. We take cost effectiveness as a key tenet. AIIB should be as profitable and cost effective as the private sector company without compromising our development objectives. When we say as profitable, I have to qualify. We do not maximize profit. We should try to be profitable. Thereby, we will be in a better financial position to help the low-income countries. We have a razor-thin focus, like a broadly defined mandate. We only look at infrastructure, but have a broad definition of what infrastructure is. This combination will give us flexibility within our mandate. If you look at the Articles Agreement, you will find AIIB's mandate is to invest in infrastructure and other productive sectors. So when we negotiate this, some people ask me, what do you mean by other productive sectors? My answer is, other productive sectors are other productive sectors. When we invest in physical infrastructure today, we should go beyond physical infrastructure. We may invest in health. We may invest in education. We may invest in freestanding environmental ecological protection projects. So we leave much room for maneuver as we move forward, instead of going back and amend the Articles Agreement. For me, Articles Agreement is the product of the tough negotiations of all of the founding members. It's sacrosanct. Better don't touch it, but leave much room for maneuver in the future. On one hand, if you spread your focus too wide, you risk losing your effectiveness. On the other hand, if you limit your mandate, you risk eventual irrelevance. We have positioned ourselves strategically in between these two bounds. So it's very much important to have consensus on this issue, both the shareholders, board, and the management. We should focus, go straight forward to what we intend to achieve. I often said, if you find yourself in New York and you want to watch the Broadway show, what should you do? You walk down the avenue. There are so many interesting shops, stores, brand new, brand name, luxuries. You look here, you look there. By the time you reach the theater, the show was completed. So, please walk straight ahead towards your objective. Don't be distracted by too many irrelevant things. We are interested in the final show, right? So this is very much important. Actually, it's the lesson from some of the existing institutions. We have universal procurement and universal recruitment policies. Universal procurement will lead to competitive bidding and ensure quality is guaranteed at the best price. Any company from any country can compete for bidding, regardless of the membership of their country. Universal recruitment ensures we can harness top-tier talent, regardless of an individual nationality. So if you're interested in joining AIIB, I'm sure some of you are, you don't have to show me your passport. We don't look at your passport. But we want to make sure you are professionally and ethically, your professional ethical integrity, your proven track record, your loyalty and dedication to development. That's it. You can keep your passport in a safe place, right? Before we negotiated the MOU and then the Articles Agreement, you see, as the head of the Chinese working group, later on as the Secretary General of the Multilateral Interim Secretariat, I had to hire a chief counsel, a lawyer, to draft all those documents, particularly Articles of Agreement. So I nominated somebody as the chief counsel to the chief negotiators. Most of the people were silent, except one lady who said, "Mr. Jin, why did you select an American national for all nationalities? The Americans are not want to join this bank. Don't you think we have no lawyers in my country?" I said, "Yes, you do." But there are two things we have to consider. One, lawyers make a hefty amount of money. I'm very stingy. I just give the lawyers a little bit money because everybody work here in the interim secretariat don't make a lot of money. I work pro bono at that time because I happily retired from the Chinese bureaucracy. And do you think your lawyers are willing to work here for a paltry pay? And secondly, you certainly have excellent lawyers, but I need lawyers who have experience with the multilateral development banks. And this lady, an American lady, served in the US law firm, private law firm, in the US Treasury, and with years of experience working as a lawyer in the World Bank. And then everybody certainly agreed, and she did a wonderful job. And then I told her, "Natalie Lichtenstein, you're really famous because you left a big footprint, in the document, in all of these documents." So actually, I have quite a number of US nationals working in our institution from day one. And we have Americans, British, Germans, French, and quite a number of professionals from the Asian countries. So we are truly international. We also have flexibility in how we finance projects. We can apply our tools in a differentiated way, finding the best mix of debt, equity, guarantees, and loans for a specified project. We are also not required to invest in any particular phase of a project's development. We do not only do greenfield projects, but also can fund late-stage projects or even reconstruction, as long as those projects are feasible, are good for the economies, and for their people. We have a different development concept, one stemming from the experience of China and other developing countries in Asia. I strongly believe that poverty reduction in and of itself will not go very far. We can throw lots of money at it and see little results. So broad-based economic development and social progress, in my view, is the ultimate solution for poverty. China has proven that this approach, infrastructure investment for broader-based economic, social development, and poverty reduction, this approach works. Operating in a cost-effective way is of the utmost importance. I believe a misconception may exist about MDBs, that once capital is paid in, it's no longer shareholders' money. This is not the case. A private sector company knows this. In a private sector company, the board asks the tough questions. How are you getting a return? What can you cut costs? Where can you cut costs? How can you do it? And how can you make money? So in our institution, we try to be very lean. We don't want to create positions, even one position more than is necessary, because we are fully aware of the fact the money comes from the taxpayers in all of these shareholders. We should do a good job in making the money do a lot of work for reducing poverty in Asia and to bring prosperity not just to Asian countries, but also the members of other countries. So we keep this in mind. That's what lean is all about. As you see, as a new institution, it's certainly very easy to be lean, but just like a biological system, when it starts to age and mature, it tends to collect lots of fat and cholesterol. So much so, by the time you think your body is too much, it's too late. You know, it's very hard to lay off the redundant positions. So we have 3-year contract. No staff is permanent. Nobody is guaranteed lifetime employment. But some people are very much worried when we negotiate the Arctic agreement and say, Mr. Jin, are you worried about loyalty? No, not at all. Because you see, given the experience of so many institutions, if you offer lifelong employment unconditionally, you will end up having underperformance in your institution. Good performers hopped on to some other better jobs. So good performers are never worried whether their contracts will be renewed. Don't worry about that. But I think it's very much important for us to have a very good corporate culture. In this institution, good performance will be encouraged. That's very much important. And we also believe it's very important for us to have harmonized working place. People should trust each other. They cooperate. We need team players. We need problem solvers. We don't need troublemakers. So this is, I think, is a very good feature and learning from the experience of some other institutions. The AIIB was constructed in such a way as to deftly navigate these troubled waters. It is an undisputed fact that infrastructure investments can help to sustain economic growth, but we must have a very good institution to deal with the challenges of poverty reduction, economic development, and environmental protection. There are lots of things we need to do. Some people were very much worried that AIIB would pose an existential threat to the existing multilateral institutions. I would be the first one to dispute this. Serving 6 years on the board of the World Bank, 5 years in the ADB, and you tell me this sibling, this new member can put these two institutions out of business. It's a prodigious insult, and I won't take it. But you see, we have vast areas for cooperation. Bretton Woods institutions were created 7 decades ago. ADB, half a century ago. EBRD, quarter century ago. Now look at the size of the economy. We have grown so much. There's vast area for us to cooperate. So I said on some other occasions, don't worry about that. There's no stampeding, okay? And even if you say, well, we have already 2 banks, you know, you should have a new one. My response is, sometimes I really try to be very polite, you see? I say, well, in this neighborhood, there are 2 restaurants. Do you think I should have a 3rd restaurant offering Chinese food? But whether I have the right to run this new restaurant, it's not up to the owner of these existing restaurants. It's the local people. If they think my food is delicious, they will come to me. If they think I will poison them, they won't come, right? So don't worry about that. We offer you very, very good food, okay? And you can enjoy the Chinese food, you can enjoy the Indian food or Italian food in some other restaurants. We are not jealous, okay? But contrary to the expectations of so many people, we actually have been working very, very well with the World Bank, EBRD, ADB. A great chemistry is already being nurtured among us. If you don't believe me, check with President Kim or President Ka. So we're very happy. Now, another big issue is China going to upend the world financial system by creating a new bank? I think people confuse two different concepts. One, system, the other, components. Global financial system or world order is a system, and those financial institutions are the components. They're completely different concepts. So we believe having a new bank, new institution, can help or boost the reform in existing institutions, thereby enhancing or solidify the existing global financial order. So anyway, by any account, this is going to be good. Now, the question is when Hong Kong would be a member. As I told you early on, we would start to look at the procedure for accepting new members in the forthcoming board meeting. And if things go well, in June, we could have serious discussions of the members, new members. I don't think it's right to keep all those eager applicants wait too long outside. So it's our duty to work this out as soon as possible. I think Hong Kong as a financial center will have a very important role to play for AIIB. For instance, AIIB can issue bonds in Hong Kong and can also have currency swaps tradings done in Hong Kong. And as you see, when Asia is more developed, economic activities would be more booming, there would be more business for banks or manufacturers. So looking forward, I anticipate a number of challenges for AIIB. First, there is the question of how to meet expectations of borrowing countries that want us to move fast. Certainty of funds with projects completed quickly is the key consideration for many potential borrowers. We will need to find how we can meet their needs without missing steps in compliance, land acquisition, resettlement, and so on and so forth. We will find ways to be cost-effective and responsive without compromising environmental and social policies. Second, we need to ensure borrowing countries understand that this is not a charity. We do not have soft loans. We make commercial loans or near commercial loans. If your projects do not meet our standard, we cannot take part. So we must find and identify profitable projects in low-income countries. If we fail to do that, we will have a problem. But I do believe even in very low-income developing countries, we can have very good profitable projects. When I was the vice president of ADB, I financed a telecommunication project in Afghanistan as the post-conflict country, and it was a smashing success. And recently, the president wrote to me, he wanted Afghanistan to be a member of AIIB as soon as possible. If we can work out very good projects in Afghanistan, why couldn't we do it in some other low-income developing countries in Asia? Overall, we have a tough task to live up to the expectations placed upon us. I can tell you, those expectations are really sky high. Now, when expectations are high, there will certainly be those who want us to fail. I'm sorry. There will always be people that we will never be convinced, but we should be prepared for sometimes even hostile comments as we move forward, as our task is challenging. But I think if we do a good job, we will be recognized as a very good institution led by the Asian countries. Let me stop here and answer your question, if any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jin. Please have a seat. Please have a seat, Mr. Jin. Please have a seat. Yes, yes.